Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host of Unfiltered Vision News from 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. And we are just welcoming you here this morning. So there's a lot of news to cover. There was a lot that happened yesterday with the president of South Africa visiting our President Trump yesterday. There were a lot of things spoken, and there's some things that I do want to discuss today. I really want to, just take a look at what has happened, I should say, historically in South Africa to bring us to where we are now in the conversations that we're having. Because unfortunately, when it comes to race, especially in our country, it gets very inflammatory very fast, right? And it's interesting because a lot of people say, why are you making it about race? But then when it's convenient, they make it about race. Either we need to have one conversation or the other. Either we're going to say, hey, you need to stop killing other humans, right? Just don't commit murder, because that happens on all sides, no matter what your ethnicity or the color of your skin. Or we're going to, just, be angry with people based upon what they look like. I'm just saying, like, it's got to be one or the other. But like I said, it seems very convenient when people want to use or bring up race, depending on who you are, they want to make it about that as opposed to what the real issue is. And I think, in my opinion, the real issue in South Africa goes beyond race. It goes back to legislation, and it goes back to things that were put in place, over a century ago at this point, back in the early 1900s, that nobody's looking at. This is a country within a continent, because South Africa is not the continent of Africa. It is a portion of Africa. And they were under what's called apartheid. So we're going to get into that a little bit later here in the program. But right now, of course, we're going to look at some news from all sides, which is, my favorite news aggregator that tells the news from all sides, left, right, and center. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. So one of the first stories that are coming up is about two Israeli officials that were murdered in D.C. by a shooter who yelled, "Free Palestine." Again, this is another situation where it's I don't even know with the Israeli-Palestine thing if it's really about race and ethnicity to where it's more about territory. And we're here in America, and we're having people outraged with one another about things going on in another country. And I don't want to say it doesn't have anything to do with us, because obviously, we do have been sending aid to Israel, and we've worked with Palestine, and we're working with everybody, trying to be a neutral party, but it seems like we're getting drug into this further and further. People should not be getting shot in DC about something happening in Israel and people yelling "Free Palestine." I'm just saying, like, why is that even happening on our soil? If you want to have that fight for real, you need to go over there and fight about that over there. Don't bring that stuff over here. And there are a lot of people who say, well, there's freedom of speech. Yeah, you are free to fly over there and have that fight and argument. We got enough going on over here on our own soil without bringing in things like this. It's just sad, because I'm like, yeah, you should have the freedom to agree or disagree with the whole issue of Israeli or Palestine. You should have the freedom, but you should not live in fear of being killed behind it. That's all I'm saying. The protesting has gotten to a fever pitch in colleges where they're not just protesting, They are actually occupying buildings. That's not protesting. By the way, protesting is not occupation. Okay, when you occupy a building, that's when you get into the territory of criminal activity. So, yeah, let's read on. So, in summary, two staff members of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. were shot and killed by an assailant who allegedly shouted, "Free Palestine," after his arrest. I mean, this is a disgrace. This is so sad. The shooting occurred as the victims, Yaron Lachinsky and Sarah Milgram, were leaving an event that took place at the Capitol Jewish Museum. The two were a couple who the Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Yitiliv Litier, said planned to get engaged next week in Jerusalem. The victim was identified as Ilya Rodriguez, 30, from Chicago, and arrested at the scene. Metropolitan Police Department Chief Pamela Smith said authorities believe Rodriguez acted alone. That's interesting. So you're a Hispanic talking about free Palestine? Like, none of that makes sense. Mm, I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna do a little group activity, like, what? So, okay, so we might have to look up, Mr. Elias Rodriguez and find out a little bit more about his background because, you know, the Metropolitan Police Department said the authorities believe he acted alone. So this is all alleged, right? So he could have been acting on behalf of another group, right? He could have been radicalized. We don't know. We really don't know. So we're going to take that word believe as an alleged assumption that he acted alone. Because for you to shoot two people and you kind of knew that they were coming out, that requires surveillance and you following these people because these were two specific people. This wasn't just a random act of violence that happened. It'd been different if maybe, I don't want to say if there was a riot outside, but there was some gang activity outside and people were shooting back and forth and they just got caught in the crossfire. That didn't happen. These people were targeted coming out of this building. So the shooting comes as this week some Western countries that have previously supported Israel have begun to stifle their rhetoric toward the country's war in Gaza. According to recent data from the Pew Research Center, which is center bias, the American public's support for Israel has also waned significantly and bipartisanly. Whew, that was a long one. Since 2022. So, as people call it, black fatigue, we have Middle Eastern fatigue. I'm not even going to just put it on Israel. I'm just going to put it on the Middle East in general. It's fatigue from Israel to Pakistan to Iran to Gaza to Syria to Palestine. It's that Middle Eastern region that has been constantly at each other. And this is a war that stems over decades. This stuff didn't just start. It's one of those things. It didn't just start, but people are now finding out about it, right? So, you know, yes, it has support has waned because people are actually starting to stand back and look and say, okay, why are we involved in this? Why are we a part of this? What's going on? It's not that we don't want to be supportive as human to human, but the more we engaged and get involved, we're becoming a part of a situation that's really none of our business, to put it bluntly. Some of this stuff is none of our business. I know that President Trump has talked about going in and revamping Gaza, and they're trying to relocate some people from Palestine and Syria, and just making sure people are okay, and they're going after the terrorists. But I'm just like, okay, we can do all that, and this stuff will be jacked up again in 10 minutes. because they didn't do it themselves. Okay. When you have people coming in and doing a little bit too much for you, you actually end up not maintaining it. I know a lot of people out there may like, well, you support reparations, and what if that's the same situation? This is the situation with reparations, separate conversation. But yeah, I'm a part of that. But we're really looking at trying to long term make sure that the healing and that process is restored long term. And so if you're not a part of the work, you might not understand or even know about that conversation. But these are, things that you may not know or be a part of. And that's okay, because I'm not a part of everything else either. But this is a situation when it comes to the Middle East, not only why are we there after this is all over? Are we still going to be there for them? That's all I'm saying. Like, how far and deep does this extension of support extend? Because it's one thing to teach people how to fish so they won't starve. But if you keep giving them fish, they will eventually die, because they will continue to look to you for support. And with reparations, we're trying to say, okay, let's get the framework built up and let's move forward so we don't have to have the conversation about reparations again. That's where I'm at. I don't want to have the conversation. I want to make sure that our people are restored here in America, and that we're working along with other groups to not go backwards, because unfortunately there's been a lot of backwards activity, you know. Not to get too far off a tangent, but we'll just talk about how when people over the past 4 years that illegally crossed the border came here, you didn't put them in predominantly Caucasian areas. You put them in the Black neighborhood. You just did. Did Black, constituents there push back? They did in Illinois and Chicago. But they were overwhelmed and overrun in New York and in California. And our politicians just piled it on, used resources. Our federal government facilitated it. And then people go, well, you should have railed back. Oh, trust me, we are railing back. You are, as they say, you're going to get that smoke. It's coming. And there's a groundswell that is building. I will let you know that. But it is to build the foundation so it doesn't fall apart anymore, so that the healing is consistent. And all I'm saying is, with the situation that's happening overseas, is that what's happening? Or are we just continuing to give people fish that will eventually, these people die off? And I know they don't want to. I know they don't want to. I know the Palestinians don't want to be moved to Syria. They want their land. They want to stay home. It's like, get the bad people out so you can stay home. They can get the bad people out, but who's going to keep the bad people out? That's the question. Is your infrastructure designed to not be overtaken by these terrorists? When you have part of your population that's supporting it because they don't want to die, so they're like, okay, I guess I'm just going to have to roll along with the terrorists over here to survive. But again, when does it become not our problem? That's all I want to know. When do we actually step away and say, okay, enough? We're going to need you to support yourselves. We're going to need your government to do what you're supposed to do to maintain your lives, because we're not always going to be here. Like I said, I respect the, how should I say, countries working together, if that makes sense. I respect that, but I don't like the dependency that we're creating with some of these countries. It's that part, because we haven't even gotten into the spending log and the spending that we do on some of these countries, the billions of dollars we spend over there in these other places. while our people are suffering over here. If we didn't have homelessness here the way we do, if we didn't have, I should say, the gang or criminal activity over here, and we had things just kind of maintained in a better way, I'm not saying I wouldn't mind helping, but I would help more respectfully, right? Again, we would teach people how to fish and not just give them fish. And we would say, okay, here's some examples of some things that we did at, you know, in government to make sure our people are okay. Whatever information we want to share, but making sure that people can stand on their own. It's that. It's we want that. We do not want to build and continue dependency. So the media covered it this way. Fox News on the right opened its coverage by framing the suspect as a pro Palestinian man, language that Euronews, with center, and CNN left did not use. Now, outlets across the spectrum did note that the suspect shouted, "Free Palestine." Okay, so when I see that, if you're saying free Palestine, you've been radicalized in some sort of way. And I highly doubt that you were working by yourself because you knew when these individuals were going to be leaving, which means there was surveillance. So you were working with more than one person. I do not think this person acted on their own at all. And I think the more we find out about this and the more that comes out, we're going to see that this person was obviously working with someone else. And with that, we'll take a short break and we'll see you on the other side.
At All Sides, we believe unbiased. All Sides, we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it?
Hey, and we're back with Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, the host of Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news from 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern, unfiltered. So I know I talked a bit about the South Africans when I opened the show. And so before I get into that, because I'm going to rest there a little bit, and I wanted to, just share some information that I've found, right? And some things I really just want you guys to know and study for yourselves, because I am sticking to the Smith-Month Act prior to the modernization of the act. I don't want to lie to you guys. I want you to have the best information possible so that you are equipped, right? And we can always learn more. And so, in this age of technology, we have to be careful about our sources. We have to be careful, what we say, because it can really frame and shape people's views of how we move, I should say, in the world, right? We have to be able to have conversations openly, but we also have to, point out information if a lie is happening, if the truth is happening, so that we're well equipped. But a lot of what's happening is they want people to kind of throw their hands up and be disengaged so that they can get away with things. And that's where, we have to be a little bit stronger than that. So let's talk about Trump accuses Biden administration of abusing the auto pen. Now, I know this came up a few weeks ago about the auto pen. And if people are not familiar with it, it's kind of similar to just an auto signature. If anybody's worked with Adobe or any other things like DocuSign, similar to that, where the president could say, hey, I'm away from the office, but this needs to be signed. Can you use my auto pen? Right? Can you make that happen, because I'm physically not there to do that? Now, those things can be done in extraordinary circumstances, but it's not just supposed to be used to be used. if that makes sense. That is why President Donald Trump, I think that's why he makes such an overt um, stance, why he sits there at his desk in the Oval Office signing physically each executive order where somebody says, "Hey, sir, we have this executive order, we have this for you to sign or this for you to do." And he physically sits there so that you can see him signing the documents. I think he's really purposely doing that so someone can't say, "Well, you didn't sign this. This was an auto pen." It's like, no, he's signed everything. Like he had like a little miniature desk at his inauguration while everybody was like, "Yeah, this is great." He was sitting there working. I may not always agree with him, but on this one, I'm like, yeah, I can understand why you are calling out the possible abuse of the auto pen. So President Donald Trump has raised questions about former President Joe Biden's use of the auto pen, suggesting that it might have been used without Biden's knowledge to enact policies during his presidency. And the more we learn about the cognitive decline, I'm you know not opposed to that suggestion, right? I'm honest. I mean, as well as I don't know what to say. You got people coming out with books like Jake Tapper saying, "Well, he really may not have been all there." So then, who was signing all of this stuff? That's the question. Was anything he did legitimate? So let's read on. So Trump has raised concerns over the legitimacy of executive actions taken during Biden's presidency, particularly a wave of last minute pardons signed with the device. Now, I have to bring up some of these pardons, y'all. I have to show you. We might have to do like a little bit of digging and searching just to find this, but I've seen it. I've seen the amount of pardons that were signed. It's kind of blow your mind when you see this list. So stay tuned. So he has also questioned Biden's cognitive ability to carry out key decisions and suggested that unelected aides may have orchestrated policy behind the scenes. The issue of interest is not the legality of using the auto pen, but whether the president explicitly authorized his top aides to use the technology to sign orders in his name or whether it was done without his consent. So, for context, an auto pen is a device to make automatic or remote signatures, which has been used by multiple presidents as well as celebrities or other public figures for decades. Trump himself has acknowledged limited ceremonial use of the auto pen. So even Trump has used it, but in limited circumstances, right? Again, I'm gonna show you this list of pardons that were signed. It's gonna blow your mind. So, how the media covered it, The Hill Center Bias reported Trump's remarks without significant commentary, noting that Trump did not specify which legislation or action he was referring to and that he had previously questioned the legality of Biden's last minute pardons signed with an auto pen. Axios on the left also reported Trump's comments, but mentioned that Trump himself has faced questions about his mental acuity and has acknowledged using the auto pen. The Washington Examiner, that leans right, focused on the Republican investigation into Biden's use of the auto pen, highlighting the GOP's claims that Biden lacked the cognitive ability to carry out key decisions and that unelected aides may have orchestrated policy behind the scenes. The article also discussed the legal implications of the use of the auto pen, particularly concerning and granting of pardons. So I know a lot of people have been talking about the auto pen. So let's look at, okay, let's see, pardons. Let me spell. We're in real time here, guys. This is what I do in the background. Pardons signed. Whoops. I may have already looked it up. Let's see. Okay, presidential pardons. No, nope, that wasn't it. Let's see if it's here. Okay. Oh, yes. Action clemency, actions. Okay. Pardon signed by presidents. Let me see if I get the search I'm looking for. Oh, these are the applications. I have to look for it. Sorry, guys. It's something that I've found before. Pardon signed by President Biden. And the reason why I'm doing this, sorry for those that are listening, y'all are just hearing me type right now and make typographical errors. But I really wanted to show the list of pardons signed. So let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see this on the screen. And if you're listening, I am at the website. It's the DOJ's website, and it's justice.gov/pardon. So if you go there, you can see pardons granted by President Joe Biden. And that's all I really typed in the search. I just said, you know, pardons granted by President Biden. and and that was able, and it brought me back to this website. Um Now, this is giving the list of people who were pardoned. What I'm trying to find is there's another list that shows between 21. Oh, man. So there's a list, and it shows the number of pardons. And that's really what I'm looking for, is the number of pardons. And it's like, I know. Okay, let me try one more search. Thanks for rolling with me. I'm not like other shows where I got this little producer person, technical person sitting in the back, finding stuff for me. It's me. It's me and you. Let's see. Let's see. List of pardons signed by presidents. I know it's going to take me back to the DOJ, and I know there's a way to find it in here. But hopefully I can just search all pardons. You're not being nice to me. You don't love me, machine. And you know what's funny is, I will stop this, and then you guys would be like, oh, then you saw it. We can see that here there were I guess preemptive pardons, because they weren't sentenced. There's no district because they weren't tried, but it says for any nonviolent offenses against the United States which they may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 through the date of this pardon. Like, these are the kind of pardons that were given at the last minute. Like, why were you given this on January 19th? This is like 2 days before Trump was put in office. Like, seriously? Like, what are we doing? And, these are things that people are questioning. Was this done by AutoPen, or did he actually sign these? Right? Like, what is really going on? But let me try one more time, and then I'm going to move on. It was like, I hate that. It was like, I know I found it and I saw it. Biden signs over 8,000 pardons, because that happened. And keep taking me back to that. Stop that. I know it's there, but you keep taking me back to the same thing, and I've seen it. So I know it's one of those things. I'm not crazy, y'all. I've found it, I've seen it, and it does exist. But there's a list of pardons for each president by the number of pardons that they've actually signed. And so that's what I'm looking for. So to date, right now, we've got pending applications, right, for commuting sentences and pardoning after it. So there's like a total of 7,000 people that are applying, right, to have their sentences commuted. And this is just under President Trump. Since he's gotten office, there's been 7,000 people to apply. But again, I might be able to find it tomorrow. I'll make sure that I'm prepped for it. But here is where you pardons that were done. So, like I said, I hope I find it because I mean, it's kind of mind blowing. Were signed just within the month of January before President Biden left office. So, again, I'll find it. Sorry about that rabbit hole, but this is what I'm doing here on the show. I don't want to just tell you guys information. I really want to have the ability to show you and also give you the resources where to find this information. So thank you for going with me down that rabbit hole to find the information that I wasn't able to find, but I will find it. I promise you. Because I've already found it already in some previous searches, just in my research. But now I really want to talk about the Afrikaners, as they're referred to, that have, some have become, I won't say they become, some of them have refugee status and they've come here to the United States and they've been granted that refugee status under the Trump administration. But here's my thing, when we are dealing with a situation so sensitive, let's be respectful to the house where the issue is maybe happening. Because I wouldn't want somebody to come into my house and say, well, you're just not cleaning up things around here. And I think you should be doing this and you should be doing that. It's not my house. You know what I mean? Like, I can't just walk into somebody's house and say, well, I disagree with everything you're doing here. And I think you should do this. Okay, dial it back. Dial it back. Don't do that to people. And I don't care who you are, and there are some people that may agree with me on that, and there may be some people that disagree. But would you want somebody, talking about your home and telling you what they think you should or should not be doing? But you guys haven't really had the conversation behind closed doors about that. You're just having it full face in front. And that's okay to have that conversation, but make sure you come respectful, right? Make sure you come respectful because, I've seen some clips about, and I'm going to show you guys some of the clips right now where President Trump was questioning the president of South Africa, you know, and it's okay to ask people questions, but make sure when you do, don't accuse them before you get the full breadth of information. Because unfortunately, we are propagandized here in America with information from overseas. We just are. Those are the facts. Whether you like it or not, our government allows other countries to propagandize us. So until you get boots on the ground, factual information, you know, and I'm not saying the Afrikaners are right or wrong. I'm not saying the black, Africans, to the melanin of their skin, the indigenous, I will say indigenous Africans to South Africa. I know some people from South Africa, and I'm really hoping to have them on the show because I really want their perspective, boots on the ground, because I don't live there. So I'm not taking a side in this. I'm just giving out the information that I've been able to attain and gather. Now, we all know, and I'm going to play this video So for people out there that are Trump supporters or people out there that are not Trump supporters, don't get triggered when I play this video because unfortunately, people have their biases when it comes to President Trump. So they may not paint or tee up the coverage in a way that's positive. But I pulled this video because I'm just looking for the information. I may be able to pull some other videos. I saw maybe one or two yesterday, and I was like, okay, I get the gist of what's going on. And I can understand his concern. He is definitely a man that does not want to see people harmed. He doesn't. And I do appreciate that about him. But in this instance, it was one of those situations where I really wish his administration would have given him more context and not just a one-sided view of what's really going on in South Africa. So I'm going to play this clip, which I was watching, about 2 minutes, so you guys can just get a perspective of where we're at. Okay, so, for those of you out there listening, that was coverage from ABC, right? There was the ABC affiliate, and then, of course, it tagged back to their national uh, branding or their national broadcasting office. Sorry about that. I was just listening to it's kind of mind-boggling. Um, you know, and President Trump again, he just wants people to stop dying, which I understand that. But for the president of Africa to say, where is this happening? Where is that? He does need that information because if that is happening under his presidency, under his watch, right? He needs to know so that he can send aid to that activity. It's not that he's ignoring what's happening because he did acknowledge, yes, there are murders that occur with black farmers and white farmers. Now, for President Trump to sit there and say, no, it's just not happening with the black farmers, it's only happening with the white farmers. Do you really know that? Or is that what you've been told? Or is that all the information you've been given? Now, in any situation, that could be for anybody. But if you are less or you're 10% of the population, and that's what Afrikaners are. They're 10% of the population, and the other set of population is 90%. If any one of you peoples died, you can claim it's a genocide because you're such a small part of the population. That's just a numbers game at that point. But when you talk about genocide, see, when I think about genocide, I think about the Holocaust. And the reason why I think about that is because we've seen pictures of literally hundreds upon hundreds of bodies being burned, being just cast aside like they were nothing. And these were human beings, right? And that happened during, you know, Hitler's time in office. And there were people that championed that and wanted that. Now, that could be considered a genocide because you went after a specific group of people and you continued to kill them and you broadcasted it. It wasn't like people didn't know it was happening and they had to find certain situations and circumstances where it was happening. It was happening. Now, if this was a true genocide, the way they claim it, it would look like that. I haven't seen bodies like that, stacked up in Africa. And maybe is that going on? Because that's what I want to know. Because when you use words like that, like genocide, that's a strong word. That is a very strong word. We need to really be careful with how we're framing this. Now, I wanted to bring up the Natives Land Act of 1913 because when I was going through, I was trying to find out. I was like, okay, well, why are there some indigenous Africans so upset about the white farmers? Because this isn't a conversation that just started 4 or 5 years ago. This has been going on for over a century. It's been going on for a long time. It depends on where you pop into the conversation, where you actually start talking about it. So it says the the history of white colonial land disposition did not begin with the passing of the Native Land Act in 1913. It spans back to the expansion of Dutch colonial settlements in the Cape. Land and livestock disposition resulted in wars between the Kihoki, San, Zwa, Zulu, Sotho, and a number of other ethnic groups that against the colonial settlers. So I know that Zulu is a tribe. So I'm assuming that these other people that I've mentioned or groups I've mentioned, they are also tribes. So with increasing conquest of Africans came the issue of how to deal with African people, which the government termed the native question. In a nutshell, the term was loosely defined in the 1903 Intercolonial Conference as embracing the present and future status of all Aboriginal natives of South Africa. So the Aboriginal natives obviously are those indigenous, and the relation in which they stand towards the European population. While the initial part of land disposition began with annexation and division of territory, over time, proclamations were made and laws were enacted by both the Afrikaners and the British to dislodge African people from their land while consolidating areas of white settlement. Okay, so we want to talk about it. Yeah, so, we want to talk about this genocide. But like I said, we need to go back to historically how we even got here. And you heard what I just read, right? It said both, it said over time, proclamations were made and laws were enacted by both the Afrikaners, which are the white Africans, and the British to dislodge African people from their land while consolidating areas of white settlement. So they literally came to the continent and said, okay, we're just taking over. We're just going to do this. Thus, by the time the Land Act of 1913 was enacted, South Africa was already moving in the direction of spatial segregation through land disposition. One of the key legislations that laid down the foundation for a spaciously divided South Africa was the Glen Gray Act passed in 1849. So this even goes back to the 1800s, where people had their land stolen from them. It wasn't like there weren't people there. There were people there and their land was taken from them. But you want to tell these people now, don't get upset. You want to tell them, don't fight. You want to tell them, you just have to deal with it. I don't know how to best deal with this, but I know we have to look at historical facts and we have to see that their land was taken from them by people who were not indigenous to the land. We just read some historical documents. Now people will be, well, that's made up history. No, it's not. This is documented history. These things did happen. They actually did happen. I like I said, I do know some people from South Africa. And we have to go back before we move forward. And so with that, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you guys on the other side. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News, where we are bringing you the news unfiltered 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday Eastern. And we are talking about the Black farmers and also, I shouldn't say Black farmers, I should say the indigenous African farmers to South Africa and also the Afrikaners, which are Caucasian, primarily Dutch, that are in South Africa. We are talking about these two specific groups because our president, hosted the president of South Africa and questioned him about genocide happening in South Africa. And like I said in our previous segment, genocide is a very strong word and it needs to be used with caution, because when you are talking about something so strongly, you really need to be able to prove it with factual information more than just numbers, with pictures. And, there are African groups out there, they are calling for the death of white people. I mean, I've seen some of the videos, but, we also have groups here that they're calling for the death of Black people and Hispanic people. Does that mean that there's a genocide happening here? And does that mean that they're overtaking, American citizens here? Because the KKK is still alive and well, and they did threaten and kill people back in the early 1900s, since their inception in the late 1800s. But we do not have a Black genocide here. So again, when you see things like that, I take pause, and I don't like to use things broad sweeping or with a broad brush. I really want to take the time to look at the factual information and know what's really going on so that I can make an informed decision on the facts that are placed before me. So after the end of the South African War, the British and Afrikaners began working on establishing the Union of South Africa, which was accomplished in 1910. However, Black people were excluded from meaningful political participation in this formation and future. The British and Afrikaner landowners and industrialists set in motion a process that would consolidate their wealth while excluding Black people through legislative means. Now, when we're talking about Black people, we're not talking about Black Americans. We are talking about those indigenous, the Aboriginal, original people from Africa. So I don't want to conflate the two because, see, when they use Black, they refer to color. But the Afrikaners, even though they are Caucasian, are given a designation. So we are going to say, for the sake of this conversation, true Africans. Now, a true African is indigenous and aboriginal to the soil. And yes, they do have melanin in their skin, but they are who they are. So let's just do that to be respectful. Okay. Now, the Glenn Gray Act of 1894 was passed a year that saw the completion of the annexation of the Transkei and Pondoland. The district of Glen Gray was located partly in Queenstown and partly in Wodehouse divisions of the Cape Colony. It had numerous valleys which were suitable for agriculture and grazing livestock. Colonial settlers were only partially successful in seizing the land for occupation, and the district remained largely in the lands of Africans. In 1879, the land was proclaimed as a magisterial district set aside for missionary and railway use as farmland for whites and Africans. White farmers, which they are called Afrikaners, resented African ownership of the land and demanded that it be taken from them. They argued that Africans, the Thimbu in particular, had forfeited their right to the land when they fought against the colonial government. How do you come in somebody else's house, pick a fight, and then tell them we're just going to take it? You know what? We're just going to take your land. We're just going to come in here. We're just going to take over you. What? This is why I can understand why there are Africans standing up the way they are. It's like, how are you going to come in my house and take my stuff? And then to basically tell me to deal with it. Like, what is that all about? So parliamentarians were vexed with the question of African land tenure and labor since the 1880s. In 1892, a commission was appointed to inquire into the Glen Gray land ownership, among other things. The report concluded that the land belonged to Thimbu people and that each family owned 55 and a half morgen, a land agriculture purpose and as grazing pastures. Morgen is an old South African unit measure of land area equal to about 2.1 acres. So they had probably a little bit over 100 acres, roughly, if I'm doing my math. The commission recommended that individual ownership of the land that is limited to one family was desirable. This would force the surplus or excess number of people out to labor and prevent the influx of new African people into the area. For instance, Victor Sampson, a farmer and an election candidate for Timbuland, sponsored by Afrikaner Bond, complained about the overpopulation of Africans in areas where they stayed and that African locations took away labor from the white owned farms. He recommended that restructuring of land ownership as a way of controlling the African population. This, he explained, would be done by giving every existing head of the family individual ownership to surveyed plot of land and selling what remained to the whites. So again, and I'm not going to read on because it's really really long, but you can find this at SA, which is like South African, but sahistory.org Okay. And look for the article of the Land Act of 1913. And I wanted to read that because I think people need to understand, you know, Africa was overrun by other people not indigenous to the land. They were not Africans. As I read through this, they were British and they were Dutch. And they just came in, they were like, wow, we really like this land. We're just going to take this. There was no conversation about sharing the land. There was no reciprocity, as they like to say. They just came and took what they wanted and told the people, we're just going to take this over from you. Again, I can see how the people there are rising up. I'm not saying that it's right the way they're going about it, murdering people. That's never right. But I can understand the fervor that they have and how tired they are of being under British Parliament rule in their own country, in their own continent. And they want those from Britain and from other European countries to go back to their homeland and get out of Africa. I can understand that because they were disenfranchised from their own land. I just read it to you. Purposely disenfranchised. And so when we're dealing with stuff like that, we really need to, like I said, take a step back, know what we're talking about, first of all, and let people that are in that conversation have that conversation. But what happened yesterday with the South African president being taken off guard the way he was, I think there was a better way to handle that in a way that could have been a two-sided conversation as opposed to a one-sided conversation where the president of South Africa had to be on the constant defense. To his point, they showed him a video and he said, where was that? Where did this happen? And they could not respond to him. So when you come up with information, be able to substantiate it and tell people, where you found this, where this is coming from, because otherwise, people are just going to think what they think, you know. And with that, I'm not going to take a break, but I do have a special guest. It is Mighty Men Thursday, and it's time for our Mighty Men Thursday segment. And good morning, and we're back to Unfiltered Vision News, where we're bringing you the news unfiltered. And today is Thursday, and it's Mighty Men Thursday, and I have a very special guest. His name, well, I call him Rock. Other people call him Uncle Rock. Some people just call him Unc. And I'm going to have him join me this morning for Mighty Men Thursday. How you doing, Unc? Are you there? Your screen's not there. It's dark, but I see your name. Let me remove you from the stage. Let him get situated and settled. I thought he was there. Okay, there we go. Almost there. Oops. Okay, I think a little bit of technical difficulty. He'll be right back in the room. Okay, I see him now. There we go.
Call come through and then kick me
Gotcha.
out of you.
Understand. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, you
Thank
go
you.
by Unc, you go by Rock, Uncle
Yeah,
Rock.
I go
You
by
know.
Rock, but on Spaces it's just Uncle Rock. But yeah.
Okay, I just want to make
Good
sure you can hear.
morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes. I
Cool.
always have to do a sound check
All right,
before
no
we get
problem.
started.
No problem.
Yes, but so please introduce yourself, tell the people a little bit about you and what you're working on in the community and where they can follow you.
Okay. On X, I'm Uncle Rock. My name is Rock Williams. I've been in music business for a long time in the early 80s, 90s, and so forth. Did very good with that. Lived in Atlanta since the early 80s. Been very involved in the structure of the music industry in Atlanta during that 90s, early 90s. And with all that done, I had pretty good success with that, you know. And but now in my elder age, I'm more focused on teaching the community about politics and helping through my nonprofit called Black Atlanta Coalition. We go out into the communities and help with different events. We put on events to educate through entertainment. Those are the things that we're doing now as Black Atlanta Coalition. So to get in touch, you could, my ex is Uncle Rock. My email would be Black Atlanta Coalition at gmail.com. The website is blackatlantacoalition.com. So those are the ways you could reach and find out what we're doing in the community and different events and stuff that we're having. So that's kind of a short synopsis of who I am and what I do. But thank you for allowing me to the stage, to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
show, should I say.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for being on here. And you also are doing a political show, I think from like 9 to 12 on
Yeah, yeah,
X.
yes, on X. My thing was that the system has taught us to just they just recruit you to vote, right? And we're changing our stance on voting. We're not just voting and sitting down. We're actually teaching the understanding of politics. So every morning, not every morning, Tuesday through Friday from 9 to 12, we host a space, Black Preservation League. I'll post that if we can. So we hold that every morning to educate, talk about politics, what pros and cons is. I went over some things, what I call the 10 uh, uh, places in politics that directly affect us either positively or negatively, right? So those things are the top things in our local government that I think affects us. So we just use that platform to teach. We talk about today's politics, yesterday's. We evaluate things. We evaluate ourselves. We do a report card like in school. We started doing a what you call a progress report midway. We do a report card at the end so that we can see and evaluate what we're doing. Is it effective or do we need to change? Is it working? Things that we can share with the audience and with our followers and stuff like that. So you're more than welcome to get some politic education through these bright minds. Founders always on there with her stuff. She's brilliant mind when it comes to politics. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And I've been a part of the space and I really like it because it is a building space, it is an educational space. I
Hmm.
know last week you had covered the SCOTUS hearing, and I guess you guys are going to be covering that again this
Today.
week. Okay, so that's going to happen today. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you guys are, on X, or if you are listening from maybe YouTube or Facebook and you want to, listen in with us, because we'll also have a discussion about it depending on how long the hearing is.
Hmm.
We dig deeper into what SCOTUS is saying, and I was just there was an article the other day of where SCOTUS determined that the lower court basically couldn't tell the executive branch what to do, and President Trump was allowed, which is crazy. He's allowed to deport over 350,000 people that were here illegally. It's like, how are you allowed to do your job? Crazy, but in any effect, that um, opinion and that determination with that particular case, in my opinion, is going to determine how this birthright citizenship case moves forward, because the executive branch has put out an executive order saying no more birthright citizenship, and birthright citizenship is not in our law. It is something that was literally made up. It's not a law, it's not codified anywhere. It's just something, it's a name that they gave and they ran with it, and they were allowed to run with it and write policy behind it. And the only entity, I should say, within our political structure that has the right to determine anything about immigration is our Congress. That falls with them. There's no state that can make people um, let's just say citizens by proxy. That's why they call them residents. They don't call them citizens.
Correct.
So yeah. So I didn't know if there was any topic that you wanted to speak about because we were introduced to you. You've given us a little bit of who you are. I've been talking about, you may have heard me talking about the South Afrikaners that are here and kind of what people call the ambush on the South African president. People are like, yeah, give it to him. I'm like, this is none of our business, first of all.
Facts.
Let's just start there.
I agree
Let's
with you.
just start right there. This is none of our business, but we are bound and determined to bring people into our house and say, you know what, I don't like what you're doing over there at your house. What?
Which is the problem with America anyway. We always got their nose in everybody's business. You can't be the ethics of how to do things right when your own country hasn't done anything right. Right? It's kind of oxymoron to me. You're preaching, but you're not practicing what you preach. Right? So
Oh yeah,
so with
absolutely.
that, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I agree with you on that. It is, but that's the trick bag of America. Everything what I've learned, because I've really had to redo my mind and dump all the misinformation out and put all the good information. And I've been doing this since 2020, when we were told to go in the house and sit down because of the pandemic. But in that space, we began to be on these social apps and we began to hear the things that people were saying, how they really felt about foundation of Black Americans. We are the most loving people on the planet. We've done things for everyone, but it seems like when they get to our soil, everyone forgets, or they don't research how and why am I here. They believe that the so-called flat whiteness, whatever ethnicity you're under that name, are the reasons that they're here. And it's nothing could be farther from the truth. We are the reasons. We've been fighting our own war on this soil while helping the world around us. And what we found out in 2020 while sitting in the house, when they told us as grown people to go in time out, we would listen to what the world was saying about us. And when we listened, we found out that nobody, and I mean nobody on this planet, is on the side of foundation of Black Americans. And then you have the audacity to come to our soil and be disrespectful, ungrateful, and get in our political seats and not fight for those who fought for you, but fight against those who fought for you. So yeah, it's a trick bag like I've never seen before. So the miseducation of our minds is so in depth because it starts from the womb to the classroom. And when you
Mhm.
get and when you got that much indoctrination, it carries on through college. And then it just carries on through life. By that time, that's why you get the diploma when you walk across the stage and everybody's cheering. It just simply says these people are fully indoctrinated into the miseducation of America, and they will continue this to pass this on through their generation and offspring, right? So yeah, that's why we are doing our political spaces, because I know without a shadow of a doubt that I was also told to just get out and vote. Not how to vote or who to vote for, not to research the people that you're voting for, but just get out and pass that vote. And I never promoted to vote for Republican. I've been voting Democrat for all my life, and just voting just to vote. It's just like things are passed on to us through our childhood, right?
Mhm.
And so yeah, this is where we at now. So I agree with you. That citizenship, the 14th Amendment, anything that was written, or any constitution amendments, any laws were specifically written for a specific group of people called the descendants of chattel slavery of America. So people are able to use these things. We didn't lock the back door. We allowed the door to be open. So people have been told how to use what was specifically for us to benefit them and their groups that come over here to be disrespectful to us. So we're just
Yeah.
doing a new rebranding of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, it is very interesting. I always find it fascinating when people are like, yeah, you need to stand up and fight. And when we stand up and fight, they're like, wait, well, why are you being so aggressive? We just wanted you to be nice about this. There is no niceness in war, and we are at war. Let's keep it
For sure.
real.
And it's a war
Okay.
without guns, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And it's like, again, you tell me as a Black American, well, you need to stand up. Okay. And when I do stand up, you tell me don't stand up because you don't want that heat. Right. And you also don't want it because you're going to have to admit you were wrong. And I
Correct.
think that's where people don't want to be. There's like, well, We're not the bad guy. No, you're not the bad guy. You were just carrying out what the bad guy put in place. And we're
And
here to
that's
stop.
correct. And that's because most of them do no research. Like right now, we are used to what's going on in America, right? So what's
Mhm.
affecting America and all these people mad and screaming and all what I call these Ellis Islander newcomers and their offspring and all those new melanated people who come from Africa and the Caribbeans, they didn't experience the first shake ugly war that was going on in America. We did. We've been a part of it since day one. So now that you came, those Ellis Islanders came in, and they came in on this part two of America, right? Where everything is cool, everybody can work, you can get a job, buy a house, invest with blood money. I call that because all this economics started with our ancestors. So there's blood money you could use. But they never understood or they didn't research that there's always been a black and white war in America. It
Mhm.
was just swept up under the rugs when you guys came
Yeah.
here. You thought it was peaches and cream, but it wasn't. It was spoiled milk, right? But and so now that they're seeing it, they don't understand it. But we have always understood it. So it's not shaking us as much as them, but it is the great shaking of America, and it must happen.
And it does. There was a book that I read called The Black Tax that I think definitely people should read, and even from here to equality. But in the Black Tax, just on the financial terrorism aspect, there have been a few banks like Bank of America and Wells Fargo. They actually had to pay restitution for disproportionately not approving loans to
Hmm.
individuals, especially those that are Black Americans. Now, they gave it to Africans because they're not from here, and every other group that they consider quote unquote minorities that they put over us, but they were even harmed as well, but not as much as we are. And, somebody said it best in one of the spaces. They're like, how are we pretty much, of the soil to be repaired, but we're still economically disenfranchised? It's like, how do those two things happen? How do you have a whole community that's majority Black, but there are no Black businesses within that city? And then people say, well, you need to recycle your dollars. And yeah, we know that. But the people that look like us that sit on the city council don't want to allow Black businesses in that area to build themselves up unless they are from the countries that they are from, right? And it turns into not a Black American community. And then, yes, our dollars are taken and they are not recycled, and we spend more. The reason why we spend more is because we are not spending it with ourselves. And so it looks disproportionate. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It kind of segued into what I was saying. The miseducation of understanding everything that you said is because one, we have allowed immigrants that are not foundational to this soil to now sit in our seats of decisions, right? So they have come together with Office of New America, look it up, Cities for Action, look it up, where these government officials, mayors on your local level have come together and said that we will look out for the immigrants over foundational Black Americans. And not only that, we have sinners sitting in our seats. I call them sinners because they're old vampires that have been placed and bitten by those called white vampires, bit black vampires, and those people sit in our seats and make decisions not to benefit the community, but to absolutely work against the community. They're
Mhm.
sponsored by it. So it's no. So when our communities look like it is, you have to then question what I said are the 10 political positions on your local level, which is city council members, which is school board members, which is the mayor, which is the county commissioner, which is the city of clerks, which is the treasurer, and which is zoning, and which is public directors. These people, you have to understand what their responsibilities are. These, especially when it comes to the council members, which in most of our black cities are black Democrats, black old vampires. These are the sinners that are sitting in these seats and not doing anything for the community. And how do I know that? Because I can go to any black community and it does not look like it's prominent like those on the north
Right.
side or the
Mhm.
east side or the west side. So what is going on? You have to understand what these people do, what their positions are, so you can hold them responsible for your lack of not doing anything. And the most important thing is we got to run candidates to
Mm.
get these people out these seats, right? And
Right.
and we're not party sensitive. If I have any party I'm going to support is the Redemption Party. I'm not going to, or any other party that is anything but that. We use the Republican and Democrat parties because that is the only
Right.
things, those are the two top dogs, right? But
Right.
they are not the ones in your favor. And we got a lot of people in seats that are not doing anything for us. And yeah, I agree with you on that, man. It's our communities will never be what they need to be if we don't get the proper people that look out for the people first and not their friends who they get showing all these bags of money, as we saw with Elon and Doge did, finding all this money that American taxpayers were spending all over the world, except for the people who helped their first economic growth in America, which is our ancestors who are supporting us in this move of retaking our soil and our political seats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. And when we're here, we're at the precipice, of getting
mhm,
it. What I don't want to hear is I don't want to hear people fussing about it now. Well, what do you mean? No, be quiet.
right,
Stop
right,
telling me to fight. And then when I'm fighting, tell me to stop fighting. It's
right.
the dumbest thing
And
in
there's
the
always those
world.
people, and there's always those people who just on the sideline, right? They check the people who are in the fight, and
Hmm.
but be on the sideline complaining about the fight. Like,
Oh,
what do
oh
you
yeah.
want? What
Oh
do you
yeah.
want? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's mind boggling, you know, the things that we go through. And I started my political fight, back in 2022 when I was running for president. I was like, okay. Everybody was like, "Why are you running for president?" I was like, "Because that's what I'm supposed to do." And then I started the party, and then the party won, our first election, and I've been in the fight, ever since that time. But it took me getting off the couch and getting engaged, and a lot of times we don't want to get engaged. And even with the Republican Party, people call some of the Republicans rhinos where they're Republican in name only. It's because they are Democrats in disguise within the Republican Party. So if
correct.
you're wondering why the Republican Party doesn't look like the Frederick Douglass Republican Party, that's why. And they're still weeding those people out. And we have people, that do support the Redemption Party. They're in the Republican Party fighting to change that because they can see the destruction of their own party coming to fruition. I'm like, oh, you finally starting to see these people and weed them out. This is
Yeah.
why you're viewed the way you're viewed, right?
Hmm.
Because you weren't holding people accountable, and it's because you have an ideology. Both parties do. To me, I'm like, our country should be at a better place and not in a worse place if these parties are so great and wonderful.
That's right. I agree with you 100%. And that is the problem. The retake of America by the foundational people here in America. Man, we are so far behind. This thing started back in 1999 with the Office of New
Yeah.
America. It was
Hmm.
introduced and put in motion when Barack Obama got in office, and it's been continuously going on because we, unfortunately, didn't pay attention to the blackness. Everybody was cool. I was part of it too. Black first. I didn't, tears. I didn't know if I was going to ever see a black president. Oh my God. But then you find out later, it was a Kenyan. It wasn't even a foundation. We have not had a foundation of black president yet. So with those things, everybody's in our government and in our seats except the people who should be fighting for the soil. Just like with that cosplaying a person named Kamala Harris, right? She said, yeah, when asked, are you going to do anything for reparations for black people? And I mean, direct question. She had to come to the truth of herself and say, well, let's be clear. And let's be real clear. I ain't going to do nothing for black foundation of black Americans that's not going to benefit everybody. That is the ideology of these parties. You know what I mean? They don't, they, if they're not going to do anything specific for the people who they should be doing things specific for, right? They mix all these things up in our things, and so it gets real confusing. But again, that goes back to what I said. We have these immigrants that have come on our soil and have got into our politics because we have been voting and sitting back in the couch, as you said, and not really being engaged in watching this thing. We are voting people in, and we don't even know the lineage or the ethnicity of these people. Are they really for America first? Or are they just from another country living in America, fighting for their offspring and their ethnicity or wherever they come from?
Right, right.
So these are
Like,
the problems.
yeah,
Yeah.
like Ilhan Omar. We can use her
Yes.
a great example, right? She is I'm trying to think of the country that she's from because I can see
Somalia.
Somalia,
Yeah,
and I want to say that's Tim Walz's state, and you know she on camera denied helping them evade ICE when other people were championing her, telling them the information. It was like, just because you didn't tell them how to evade ICE on camera doesn't mean it didn't happen.
correct.
Because you then on camera said, yes, I am helping them understand their rights, you know, around ICE. If ICE is looking for them, they're not here legally.
That's right.
You are a member of our Congress. This is our country. This is not Somalia, and you were telling these people how to avoid being taken and deported as a sitting US representative. Like, to me, she needs to be in prison.
She do. And
That's an easy one. But are the Republicans gonna do it? That's the
that,
question.
yeah, they have to do it, you know. But listen, these people. The question is, like I said, that's that vote and sit back, right?
Hmm.
You vote for these things, and then you expect the system to do it by themselves.
Right.
But that's not how it works. It works like what the Democrats are doing. They opened the floodgate and let 20 million people in our country. There was nobody pushing back. There was no
Yeah.
Republican pushback. And,
Hmm.
and, and we didn't play the game like the Democrats do. Now that
Right.
let the 20 million people in, they're
Hmm.
now they're doing what we should have did when they were coming in. They're doing it, stopping it, right? They're in the street. They're physically doing it. The judges are doing it. The mayors are doing it. Everybody that bought into the Office of New American Concept are now protecting those that they brought into this country illegal, right?
Hmm.
Illegally. So it's up to us. People say, well, Trump hasn't deported enough of these immigrants, illegal immigrants. But check this out. The Democrats didn't have we didn't stop them from bringing them in like they're stopping Trump and the administration from deporting them. So
Hmm.
we have to now become what I call America's most wanted concept. We have to see these people. They've
Right.
given you a number to call them. Get these people out the paint because they're here to displace us and take over our country.
Right, right. You are very correct on that. It is up to each one of us. And so I'm going to end our segment there because I know you got to get ready for your show
Yeah.
coming on at 9, and I want you to be prepared. But
Okay.
again, check out Unc on X. He Tuesday through Friday,
Right.
you know,
Under Unk Rock. Right.
yep, giving that political perspective and allowing us a place to really come and talk about things that we're doing. So thanks again for coming on for Mighty Men Thursday. I really appreciate your voice
Hmm.
in the fight and in the conversation. And thanks for joining us. And again, everybody, check out Unc on X. And we're going to take a short break, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Hello, everyone, and we are back with Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, bringing you the news unfiltered. Thank you so much for joining us in the last segment where we had Unk, which we also call Rock or Unk Rock, and you can check him out on X at Unk. That's UNK Rock ROCC on X, and he's got a political perspective show from 9 to noon where we talk about all types of politics, and everyone is welcome to join. We sometimes we get some heavy conversations about lineage, and we're bringing facts and just different information, but I just want you guys to know that everybody is welcome. you know just let's be respectful and have a broader conversation, and today they'll be covering the SCOTUS hearing, so definitely join him during that time. Now, I was finally able to find what I was telling you guys about a couple segments ago about clemency statistics. And these are the numbers of pardons that were signed. And this is why the Trump administration is really questioning the auto pen and how it was used based on these numbers. So these numbers are outstanding. So just in 2021, there were like 3,000 petitions that were pending, right? There was those who received like 2,092 petitions closed without presidential actions, 1118. Okay. So some of these were signed, some of them were not. But when you get down to, so like in 2022, there were 79 that were granted clemency, petitions 3, pardons 3, I'm sorry. In 2023, there were 9 pardons and there were 34 clemency that were granted. In 2024, there were 13 and there were 19. In 2025, you've got 55 pardons and 4,000 clemency. That's a lot, right? Because 2025 is when he was going out of office. What's going on in office then? What? Seriously? That's a big number. It's a big jump. From 19 to over 4,000? Really? Seriously? I mean, President Trump, and this was during his first administration from 2017 to 2021, he barely hit 100 people for clemency and a little over 100 pardons, during his time. And that 144, those included the First Step Act people, of which one, I want to say her name, I don't want to say her name wrong, but she is his new pardon czar, basically, going in and finding out people that need to be pardoned, right? So I know why that number is so high. But compared to Joe Biden's numbers, I was like, okay, you pardoned 80 people and you gave clemency to over 4,000 people. It's a lot. It's a lot. Oh my goodness. Like, what was happening with the situation? Now, the petitions denied, that's a very high number here. And the petitions pending end of reporting month were like 8,000. So there were 8,000 people that basically applied for clemency in just January. Just January. Oh, like not in a year, just in January. And then you had over 4,000 that were given clemency. So this is where the auto pen conversation comes into play, because it's like, did you really sign all of those? And this is what people are questioning, because that's an extraordinary number. It's not small. It's very extraordinary. I mean, out of, let's just say, the 7,000 applicants, even in 2024, and that's over a calendar year, only 19 clemency applications were approved, right? And you approved over 4,000 in 2025 before you walked out the door. And you saw in the last segment where he had pardoned people who didn't even have a charge or criminal activity to even really pardon them, but he gave them clemency kind of based on if anything happened from 2014, not 2024, from 2014. So you, like an 11-year span. But this is what we're doing. This is why we're questioning this. And I think this administration has every right to question it, because it doesn't look right. We knew Joe Biden was declining. Even before the debate, people were like, this isn't right. This is elder abuse. He's just walking around lost in the White House garden. There's footage There's footage of him falling up the stairs. There's footage of him, you know, saying things that later they had to walk back. They're like, oh, he's fine. He's sharp as a tack. And he's talking about the New World Order. And everybody's like, shh, quiet. Those things happen. We all saw it. We all have video of it. And it was not a deep fake, as people like to say. It was not a deep fake. We all saw that in real time. You gotta stop that. You gotta stop playing in our face. But yeah, I just wanted to pull this up so you guys could see it. So if you go to justice.gov/pardon/clemency statistics, that's where the numbers are, the clemency statistics. And this is what the Biden administration is definitely questioning. And I agree wholeheartedly that they should. Now, interesting. This is interesting. The DOJ reportedly investigating former New York Governor Cuomo over COVID response. Now, I understand that they are going to investigate some people. And during that time, it was, it was bad. I'm not going to say it wasn't. It was horrible. But if you're going to investigate him, then you're going to have to investigate all of them. All of them. You're going to have to, throw Newsom in here. You're going to have to go to some of these other governors that literally locked down their states and people where other states didn't. But let's check out what they're talking about. It says the Justice Department is reportedly investigating former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo over his testimony to Congress and his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington launched the investigation at the request of Representative James Comer, a Republican of Kentucky, chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Comer asked the Justice Department to prosecute Cuomo over statements he made during the committee's COVID-19 pandemic investigation. Meanwhile, Cuomo is running for mayor of New York City and has denied any wrongdoing. You know what? I just need some of these politicians to get a real job. They get in and they're just like, yeah, I just want to stay a forever politician. He shouldn't be allowed to run for mayor after he had to step down from being the governor. To me, that should just eliminate him from running for any political office. And see, the reason why he's running for a city municipality position is because there's kind of like, I don't want to say there's cover, but he has already been at the state level, right? So why would he run for state or House Senate representative seat where he would be under the governor? I mean, he's already been the governor. Why would you want to go to a municipality? Why would you want to go to a city position where you are opening yourself up to lawsuit? People can totally sue you at the municipal level. I don't know, people didn't realize that or not, but they can. Why are you trying to hide in politics? Don't vote for this person. He was a horrible governor and he will be a horrible mayor. I'm going to say it. You were a horrible governor and you're going to be a horrible mayor. You were brought up on charges of harassment and all these other things. I mean, really? Don't vote for this dude. Do not do that to yourselves, New York. Don't do it. We're going to bring you some good candidates. I'm going to find somebody. I found somebody on X yesterday talking about running for New York, and I'm going to have that individual on the show to talk about their platform and what they're going to do to fix up that nonsense going on there. Because, Mr. Eric Adams, he's acting like, well, I was just doing what I was told. And I, really want to work with the Trump administration. Yes, you do. Because if you don't, you're going to jail for all the nonsense that you did. Really, sir? All of them. They're just people that need to be in jail. Anyway, so we got some key quotes. Comer said, Andrew Cuomo is a man with a history of corruption and deceit, now caught red-handed lying to Congress. This isn't a slip-up. It was a calculated cover-up by a man seeking to shield himself from responsibility for the devastating loss of life in New York's nursing homes. Cuomo spokesperson Rich Azzaparati called leak of the investigation lawfare and election interference, plain and simple. Guess what? It's not election interference. This man should not be running for politics. Go on the podcast with your brother and do that. Stay away from politics. If you were allowed to be the mayor, the city's already trash. You're just there to put the final nails in the coffin. You do not need to be mayor of that city. No, your state is a dumpster fire. Your state is a dumpster fire. I will say it again. New York should not be in the position that it is now. It's an open air prison, and that's disgusting. And you did nothing to help the people during that time. Nothing. Okay? People should never vote for you ever for anything. Cuomo was criticized for his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly with respect to his initially barring nursing homes from refusing to accept patients who tested positive for COVID-19. House Republicans asked the Justice Department to pursue criminal charges against Cuomo after accusing him of lying to Congress during the COVID-19 investigation. Yes, he lied. Sources across the political spectrum noted the timing of the leak and quoted Cuomo's spokesperson, Richard Azzopardi, who views the investigation as something President Trump and his top Department of Justice officials say they are against. Fox News, right bias, also focused on the alleged wrongdoing by Cuomo, highlighting the Republican-led calls for his prosecution. Well, they were calling for this while he was the governor. That's why he stepped down. I don't think we have such a short memory, especially of those that have just awful criminal behavior. He stepped down. He didn't finish it out. That's how they got Kathy Hochul in there right now. Okay? That's how they have that nightmare to deal with. And she is a nightmare. I don't care what you think. She's a nightmare. I feel sorry for the people of New York, because they have to deal with such devastating political nonsense. I mean, do politicians even like the people of New York? I'm just saying. I'm just keeping it 100 on that. It's like, do you even like the people you serve? Have you seen the subway? Billions of dollars, and it looks like a death trap. And it shouldn't. Because what are you doing with the money? And now they're talking about having, I won't call them homeless encampments, but they want places down there for the homeless to be able to, I guess, maybe shower or rest or whatever. It's like, so you're going to take them off from above ground and bring them underground with regular people who use the transportation there. Like, stop it. You're just moving things around and not dealing with the systemic issue. The issue is you closed the mental facilities that were helping these people. You closed the drug rehab facilities that were helping these people. And you're all Democrats. So you don't get to sit back and say it's the Republicans' fault. No. This is a Democrat state, Democrat city. And it's devastating. But you have the money to actually fix it. You don't want to fix it. You don't. You just want to cry foul and get more money. Moving people from Rikers Island to in the middle of a city. They're doing that too. You're doing these things. You are devastating people's lives. And Cuomo, you want to run for mayor? No. You need to go somewhere. You need to go somewhere. I'm telling you now, you better find a podcast and get on it. Speak your mind, do what you need to do. But stay away from politics. Stay away. Because you've already proven yourself to be worthless within the political arena. And with that, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back on the other side.
The browsers of today are broken. They've been overtaken by a barrage of sneaky and annoying ads, trackers that follow your habits, and cookies that build profiles, and all sorts of other internet clutter that's taking precedence over the content that you want to see. In fact, these useless bites can take up to a whopping 50% of page load times, with a third of it anxiously trying to learn more about you. To make matters worse, some ad blockers are even letting ads through when large advertisers pay them. But do you really want a leaky ad blocker? It's because of these very reasons that we developed Brave, a new browser that kicks internet crud to the curb and makes it faster, safer, and better to surf the web than your current browser. With Brave, everything you need is built right in. We integrated technology that automatically blocks trackers, annoying ads, and shields everything that can cramp your style and destruct your privacy. With it, you can expect increased speeds nearly 2 times faster on laptops and up to 4 times faster on mobile. And unlike any other browser, Brave allows you to support your favorite publishers with automatic micropayments, so it's a win-win for you and your favorite sites. To top it all off, Brave is open source, because we truly believe it's our web and we need to fix it together. So ask yourself this question: do you want a web browser made for the internet of today? If so, try Brave. It's faster, safer, and ad-free.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning on Unfiltered Vision News. We had Mighty Men Thursday with our guest, Rock, who is also referred to as Unk. And join him this morning from Tuesday. I guess they go Tuesday through Friday on X and a space. And we talk about the political perspectives that are happening in the community. And with that, we're going to be talking about the SCOTUS hearing that will be going on today. That's going to be very interesting. In my perspective, I really do think that this last ruling that SCOTUS had telling the Trump administration that a lower court could not basically infringe upon the president's right to deport people here illegally really sets a precedent for where they go with birthright citizenship, right? Because the only body or entity that we have that can change or modify our immigration laws, which we talked about earlier this week, is Congress. They're the only ones that have the ability. A state cannot come in and say, well, we're just going to grant you citizenship and we're not even going to go through the immigration process. They can't do that. And I know there was something put in place by the Biden administration stating that if people were here 18 months and they basically kept their nose clean and did what they were supposed to do, they could get citizenship. Actually, he can't do that. And that's illegal because the only persons that have the right to do that is Congress. You can't just do it by fiat. And there's a reason for that. We have an immigration process. We have a naturalization process. And anybody who came over here after 1865, technically, if we want to just keep the numbers real, are all naturalized. They are not from the soil. They're just not. Because that's when the 14th Amendment was put in place. It was put in place after 1865, right? And some people say that it's illegal, but it's documented in legislation, so I don't know how it's illegal. It's here. It's done. It has standing, and people have used and abused it to get citizenship for their children here illegally. Now, there is a naturalization process that people can go through to be naturalized citizens legally. But even if they try to come here and say, okay, my child's naturalized, no, they're not. Not if you didn't come here legally and you're naturalized first. Everybody's a criminal at that point. And by, unfortunately, by dissemination, anyone who's come here illegally and has a child here illegally, that child is the responsibility and jurisdiction that you're under. So if you are from Honduras, your child and you are under the jurisdiction of Honduras, not the United States, ever. Your child is not under the jurisdiction of the United States, and they're not stateless. They do have somewhere to go. They go where their parent goes. They don't get automatic citizenship under the 14th Amendment because it doesn't apply to them. It just doesn't apply. I'm really curious to see how they tongue twist this, because as you just heard me lay out that argument, there's no way around this. If you are not naturalized, your child is under the jurisdiction that you're under. So again, I'm just using Honduras as an example. If you came here illegally, had a child, your child is under the jurisdiction that you are under. And if that's Honduras, and you need to go back home. Just because you had a child on the soil does not give them jurisdiction states, because you're not naturalized. If you're not naturalized to the United States, you're not stateless. You have somewhere where you came from. You just didn't just pop up out of the air. When they used that stateless argument, I was like, are you kidding? First of all, Honduras isn't a state. It's not. It's a country on the continent of South America. Stop that. What do you mean stateless? Y'all don't go somewhere. It's just horrible how they enjoy lying and just abusing the Constitution when it's convenient for them. And they keep trying to say, well, this isn't about the 14th Amendment. And if it's not about the 14th Amendment, then everybody needs to go home. Because why are we here? You're trying to argue something. Birthright citizenship has never been a thing. You've made it a thing, but you've used the 14th Amendment to make it a thing. So if you take out the 14th Amendment, what are you basing your argument on? Like, where are we even at? We're nowhere. We're back at square zero. Go home. That's all I got to say. Go home. They need to get this thing resolved in 10 minutes. Like, you know what? We're throwing this out. You have no case. Everybody's here illegally. You're all going home. There's no defense for you because there isn't one, because birthright citizenship doesn't exist. Congress, and like I said before, I think Katanji got this right. Congress is the only one that has the authority to change the immigration laws. And they did not put in place birthright citizenship in Congress. It doesn't exist. And if it does, please show me the bill. I'll sit back and I will be like, oh, okay, I guess it does exist in legislation. It doesn't. And you cannot just, unilaterally decide that people are here legally. The problem is birthright citizenship, as it's been framed, has never been challenged. And now that the Trump administration is actually challenging something that has been done illegally for decades, now we get to have the open and full conversation and see where these people really are, because I don't think they have our best interest at heart. They really, really don't. I did want to check into something quickly before we end the show. So I want to check out one of the analysis. I usually try to stay in this column that's like the middle center, but this one just caught my eye, and this is an analysis. So it's not necessarily news. It's not opinion. It's just something that they're, what do we think about this, right? So I wanted to check it out because I just found it interesting. So Trump unquestionably violates a court order. Well, what do they think he's violating? It says, welcome to the log off. The Trump administration moved to deport 8 men to South Sudan in what a federal judge in Boston says was unquestionably a violation of a court order. What happened? On Tuesday, the U.S. government put 8 men, only one of South Sudanese citizen, on a deportation flight to South Sudan, an unstable country in East Africa that is on the verge of civil war, with minimal notice and no chance to speak with a lawyer. Their exact location is now unclear. What have courts ruled about deportations? So we were just kind of talking about this, right? Were these people here illegally? Obviously, they were here illegally. But you want to give people protection under our laws that are only afforded to citizens, right? And you want to say, well, it's a civil war. That's not our problem. It really isn't our problem. You need to go home. If you want to be, again, I will say it over and over again. If you want to be here, you need to do it the right way. And I wanted to kind of end on that. But if you guys want to check that story out or that analysis, definitely check out All Sides. That's allsides.com. And this is an analysis by Vox. And yeah, that's what they're talking about. And I also shared with you, it's like a lower court can't question what the administration is doing. People can be deported. Just understand that, lower court. They can be deported. I'm really looking forward to the ruling from SCOTUS on birthright citizenship and how illegal it is. Because there is no argument for this illegal activity. And I really want to just, I want to leave you guys with that. We are a nation of laws, and if we fail to protect our country, and if we fail to uphold the laws to protect our country, that's our fault. And it's going to take all of us to do it. And no, all of us can't be everywhere all the time. But wherever you are, uphold the law and make sure that the people that you have entrusted at the city, state, and federal levels in these political spaces are doing their job. And if they are not, you vote them out. And with that, we will see you guys tomorrow for Prayer with Friday. I'm really looking forward to it. Looking forward to some prayer because we all need it. So I'll see you guys tomorrow and have a great day.